Well, welcome everybody to TubPreneurs, episode 2, live from the hot tub. I think we got the audio issues from last time a little more figured out, so this one should sound a little bit better, be a little less bubbles, but you should be able to hear Kenneth and I a lot better. And I am super excited for this week's episode with Kenneth Scott. I've known Kenneth now for, I don't know, 6 months to a year. He's been helping me with my journey into the unknown, into business entrepreneurship, and so many other things in my life. And Kenneth brings a very unique perspective that I think is going to be so important for us to hear as he shares his story going from the manufacturing world into his entrepreneurial endeavor, and specifically within business and personal coaching, and really going around the idea of getting not only your mental subconscious right, but also your heart and the different EMF levels that our heart can actually give off, and this idea of feelings and subconscious programming and everything like that. And it's really going to be something that I think he's going to bring a lot of value to you, no matter whether you're in business, you're thinking about business, or if you're just an individual who wants to get better in their life. Kenneth has so much to offer in that. So, Kenneth, welcome to TubPreneurs. I'm glad you're finally here.
Thanks, John. Greatly appreciate it. I'm excited to be here, and congrats on your second episode. So it is no longer a one-off.
That's right. That's right. We're official. I think once you hit 2, you're officially a podcast. Like, you can call yourself a podcaster.
All right.
And I can say I am the most successful business hot tub podcaster on the planet.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah. So I'd say that's pretty good. You know,
awesome.
It works out pretty well. So what I kind of want to start off with is if you could give kind of a 500-foot view or 5,000-foot view of what it is that you currently do and what you're currently helping people with.
Yeah. So what I currently do is I teach individuals, teams, and organizations a neurological and biological process for change. I teach people how to be adaptable. There are recent studies that surveys show that companies are noticing that they need to reinvent themselves every 6 years. Now, not too long ago, a couple of decades ago, that cycle was more like 75 years. So you can think back to even way back in antiquity. You could have full families, generations of blacksmiths doing the exact same thing for generations. And now a company needs to evolve itself in 6 years or less, depending on what industry you're in. And my point of view is that if individuals aren't adaptable, organizations will not be adaptable.
Sure.
So that's what I do. I teach individuals how to change, how to be adaptable, to continue to evolve so that organizations can strive for more thriving environments.
So, Kenneth, is this kind of how, like, I mean, have you been doing this all your life, or how did you get started in this endeavor?
Yeah, great question. I haven't been doing this all my life. 2012, I hit the wall, so to speak, and I had what I call my nervous awakening, where I realized I could no longer going on through life being the person that I was, thinking the thoughts that I was thinking, acting and behaving in the way that I was behaving, and feeling the way that I was feeling. And we can call that the dark night of the soul, where I realized I just couldn't go on. And a lot of us need that. We need the diagnosis, or we need some tragedy in our lives to realize that we need to change. So I realized I need to change, and I came across the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, specifically the book Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself.
Okay.
And as I was digesting that, I realized, oh, that's me. And so since then, I have been working to master that process, to fully embody the philosophy of it, to become it, so that I could master who I was. And the reality of it is, is that when you master yourself, you master your future.
Wow. Wow, that's powerful. I hope you guys picked up on that. When you master yourself, you master your future. And I know as I've been working with Kenneth and coaching underneath him and him being not just a coach, but a mentor in my life, you've also often referred to the idea of remembering that future self. So if we were to look at that time in your life, so 2012, you had this, I'm going to call it a come to Jesus moment, right?
Sure. Sure. Plenty ways to describe it.
Yeah, many different ways. So you're having this kind of come to Jesus, oh my gosh, something's got to change or it's just not going to work moment. What were you doing at that time, and how did you wind up where you're at now, where you're kind of doing coaching and strategic planning and teaching people these principles and philosophies full time?
This could be a little bit of a dialogue, a little bit of a story.
Yeah,
so
no, it's fine.
Hang out with me. I'm getting somewhere. Stick with me. At that time, I was living by the hormones of stress. And what I mean is I was in survival. And that is obvious to me now, because as I look at who I was back then, and it's kind of like a dream.
Yep.
I know I experienced it, but I don't know that it was real because it's so distant from who I am now. But I know I was living by the hormones of stress because I expressed the emotions of anger, frustration, annoyance, and I was constantly judging my environment. I was constantly blaming, shaming, and I had thoughts like I don't have enough time and there's too much on my plate. You know, all these indicators that I was living by the hormones of stress. And because I was living by the hormones of stress, the living organism isn't designed to live in survival mode for extended periods of time or chronic stress. Mm-hmm. So I was starting to have breakdown. I had terrible sciatic nerve pain. I had terrible pains throughout my spine and my back, and so that's where I found myself. And the worst part of it is that the hormones of stress are highly addictive. Yep. So I was addicted to the environment, the situations that I didn't even like. I needed them to reaffirm my addiction to the emotion, to stay in stress, because the body, it just wants to maintain normal. Right. Because if you maintain normal and you've survived to this point, then normal's okay. The body doesn't know that living in stress is bad for it if it's already made it this far. And stress releases chemicals too, right? So it's kind of the same dependency that you'd have on smoking cigarettes or drinking alcohol if you're an alcoholic. Like, it's kind of that same idea. Yeah. We can actually get addicted to stress, and that's what you're talking about. Absolutely. Yeah. One of the primary hormones that facilitate the stress response is adrenaline. And just like a triple shot of cappuccino, right? You get a rush of energy, mm-hmm. and it does. It heightens your senses, and sure, you can get a ton of stuff done. But the thing is you'll always do it the way you've done it before. Yeah. Because when you're in survival, it's not a time to try something new. Hmm. So you're not going to do anything be creative. You're not going to be innovative, and that goes back to the idea of organizations need to evolve themselves. Right. So yes, you get addicted to the adrenaline rush, and the body is craving it. So if you decide to stop, hey, I'm just not going to stress today. Cold turkey might not work so well. Right. As soon as you do, first of all, just like an addict, you're going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to have to go through the withdrawals of that. And then you're going to notice everything in your environment just reminding you of why you were pissed off in the first place. Yep. Yep. And you're going to start feeling that emotion again. And chances are, your conscious mind is not going to be able to overcome that unconscious craving for that addiction. Yeah. Especially if you're not aware of it. Right, exactly. And I hope you guys are listening to this, because what Kenneth is talking about, I think, plagues all of us at some level throughout our life, where we're operating out of stress and we can't figure out a different way to go. It's like we want to do something different. We want to change. We want to quit cold turkey. But the reality is we have the programming in our minds that keeps us coming back to the exact same things. And without actually going in and changing some of that subconscious programming, you're really not going to get any different results. And I think it's the
there's that short definition for psychosis of, psychosis or being psychotic or whatever is, doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. And so much of that we do subconsciously in our life when we're operating out of that stress.
Absolutely.
So you're involved. What can I ask? What were you doing at the time that all this was going on, that you were going through this process?
Yeah, I was in manufacturing.
Okay.
I was both a process owner, process engineer, and I was also team lead. It was actually my dream job, to tell you the truth. And you could look at the circumstances and say, from the external environment perspective, I had everything that I could want. But inside, I was breaking down, and I became aware of that I couldn't sustain this any longer, and the acquisition of material gain was costing me my life.
Wow. And so you're going through this process, you're recognizing that you're stressed, and you're realizing that this dream job that you have, maybe it looks good on paper, it's killing you inside. And I have a feeling right now there's somebody listening to this podcast that can relate to that. And I can tell you, I've went through some of this myself, where I was living a job that I don't know if I would call it my dream job, but it kind of was. It was the thing that I had strived so long for, as a general manager, and to be the one that's kind of doing all this stuff. And it wasn't until I actually stepped out of that and started my entrepreneurial journey that I realized how much I was living in stress through that. And it took that external change. So for you went through this, going through this process, learning all of this stuff. How did that teaching from Dr. Joe directly impact what you were doing in the manufacturing world?
So we got to fast forward a little bit.
Okay.
First thing I want to say before we do fast forward in time is I did what most people would do in that situation, not knowing what I know now and not having the tools that I have now. I quit.
Okay. Like literally quit the quit the company.
The job.
Okay.
And tried to escape from the environment.
Okay.
And so now you fast forward 3 years and a series of events. I had took an occupation in training, where I learned a lot of coaching techniques and a lot of skills that like effective listening and things like that are serving me now in my current endeavors. But it was a different environment. Mm-hmm. You'd have to recognize that going from manufacturing, an inherently high stress, moment by moment, there are stressors coming at individuals in the environment of manufacturing. So a very different environment. And I was beginning to believe that I had mastered some aspect of myself. I was a little more calm, a little more patient, a little more kind, a little more loving.
A little less pissed off.
A little less pissed off. And then I chose to go back into the manufacturing world. And within 2 weeks of me being back in the familiar environment, mm-hmm. the owner who pulled me into that organization to help them in a transformation, specifically in a particular methodology, said, "Hey, you're expressing your frustration in meetings. I need you to pay attention to that." Mm. And it was like a slap in the face.
Yeah.
So then I said, "Okay, Ken, what are you going to do? Are you going to do what you did last time and run away from the challenge? Because I'll tell you what, you can leave the job, you can leave the career, but sooner or later you're going to come up against yourself.
Right.
Your unconscious mind, your body will find something."
Sorry for the background noise, by the way, guys, if you can hear that. We are outside, some uncontrollables.
Just wanted to make sure that you really paid attention to what I just said. Sooner or later, you're going to have to come up against yourself.
Right.
And that's what I had to do. And so for the next 5 years, I was in the crucible. Day after day, looking at, what do I want to be today? Cultivating that state of being. Mm-hmm. Who exactly do I want to be? How do I want to show up today? One day, one life. Who do I want to be today? What would be the greatest expression of myself that I could be today? And then I would go out into my environment. And sure enough, sometimes I wasn't good enough. My environment influenced me. And I came home pissed and I said, okay, what did I learn? Who got me? What situation? And if I had a chance to do it again, how would I do it differently? And then the next morning, cultivate that state of being again and go back into the fire until sooner or later, unconscious to me really, because when we're in the process of change, you don't really notice it, right? It's like when you're losing weight. Someone can say, "Wow, man, you look great. You lost a lot of weight." And you're like, "Oh, wow, thanks." Like I hadn't really noticed yet.
Yep.
And I kind of wanted some kind of validation. And so what happened was people started coming up to me and they would lay their stress on me. But I had gotten to a point where it did not affect me. I wasn't spreading the wildfire anymore. I was extinguishing it for that person just by listening, just by understanding, just by caring. And they would say, "Man, thanks for listening." And they would walk away. And I'd say, "What is going on?" And then I got nicknames like Zen Ken or the Jedi.
It's very fitting. It's very fitting, both of us.
Right? And so I started to notice, I think I'm getting somewhere. I'm beginning to master me.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I made the decision that, okay, I think I could teach people this.
Okay. Yeah.
I think I have enough skill, enough wisdom, enough experience in the process to help somebody else adopt it, to become it.
Wow. And so this process of you becoming Kenneth, right? You kind of really realizing who that future self, as you've put it to me a couple times, of defining that future self, becoming that future self, that took some time.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Now, do you think, I mean, whatever entrepreneurial endeavor it might be, do you think that the old Ken could have done an entrepreneurial endeavor and been successful the way that you have?
He never would have started.
Never would have started. Yeah.
No. The fear of the unknown, the unpredictability of being an entrepreneur in its nature, it is unpredictable. If it's predictable, you're not doing anything new, right? Would have prevented him because he was an engineer, Gantt charts, planning out every single phase of everything. And if things didn't hit on the dot, get out of his way.
Yeah. Well, and
you're going to hear about
you're
it.
an engineer, so I mean that's what you did, right? That's what you really knew.
Absolutely.
That's what you had went to school for. Was
Absolutely.
you're working within kind of set bounds of, if XYZ happens, whatever ABC will occur after that.
Absolutely.
And so really, if I'm going to say this, and I hope you take this the right way.
Absolutely.
If Kenneth can make this change, guys, any of us can make this change. And I say that because I understand. I've been friends and been around enough engineers to see how they think. Absolutely. And it takes a very logistic, very process-driven mind to be an engineer. And a lot of times you can't see beyond that process and that system, and you'd never step into the unknown.
Yes.
It makes me think, and I'm going to bring this back to Batman Begins.
Okay.
Which you guys can argue with me in the comments if you want, but by far, Christopher Nolan's rendition of Batman was the best one ever, hands down, period. But there's one point where Bruce goes down kind of into the slums, and I think he's talking with Falcone. I could be wrong, but I think it was Falcone. And Falcone looks at him and goes, "And people always fear what they don't understand." Mm-hmm. And it's so true, because so many of us get stuck in our normality, and we get stuck in our comfort zones, that just the idea of stepping out into the unknown scares the daylights out of us. Oh, and it makes us freeze.
Absolutely.
So as you were making this, what do you think was really, when you look back and you say, "Man, this is when I knew I could step into the unknown," what had changed at that point?
Well, by that point, I knew that I could take an idea, a concept, and I could begin to put together an intention, a vision of what I wanted to experience in the future, start to give it context, and see that future event, that future possibility ahead of the event. Now, I'm not talking about how to get there. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about when it would happen, but just getting crystal clear on what I wanted and why I wanted it.
Yep.
And then once I got crystal clear on that I could rehearse it in my mind, the experience. So let's say, for example, one of the things that I wanted to experience as I began on this journey is I wanted to speak to a large group of people. I specifically wanted to be in the Haggerty Center. Because I'd been in there before. I knew what that space was like. I could put it in the holodeck. I'll speak your terms a little bit.
No, that's a good point. I love that. I love that. Put it in the holodeck.
I could put it in the holodeck, and I knew what that room was like. So I could see the room, and I could see the tables laid out. By the way, they were pretty close to being laid out that way. The round tables, because that's what they have there. I could see people's around the tables. Now, what I didn't know, who was it going to be?
Right.
When was it going to happen?
Yep.
How was it going to come to me? But I had gotten to the point in my journey where I wanted that part to be unknown. Why would I want that to be unknown? Because if I can predict it, then it's from within the box of my thinking, and it's no greater than me. And if I really want to experience something new, if I want to have a new emotion, because emotion is the end product of past experiences, if I want to experience something new in my life, then it should come to me in a way I can't predict, right?
Right.
It should be outside the box of my thinking. And I'd done that enough times with little things, little components of my life to know that I'm ready to take on a big swing.
Yeah.
And by the way, that happened. It ended up being a local organization. So Terra, anyone who's in Terra, the
Traverse Area Real Estate Association, right?
Nope.
No. Okay.
No, close. No, same. That is Terra as well, but this is Human Resources Association.
Oh, okay.
Right. So a great audience too. And it came to me in a way I couldn't predict. And it was at the Haggerty Center. And like I said, the tables were arranged about the same.
Yeah.
And I crushed it, by the way, because I had already experienced it in my mind's eye. I knew who I wanted to be in that environment.
So you had already done it enough times that when you actually got up there to do it, it was like, oh, well, we've been here before. We've done this already.
Absolutely. We have to understand that in this process of going into the unknown, that it's not the conscious mind that fears the unknown. Because the conscious mind can create, the size of our brain is so large for humans that we can make thought more real than anything else, and we can get excited about the possibility.
Right.
But the body, as the unconscious mind, as the animal, it wants familiar, predictable, known. So if we go into an environment that we don't know, we haven't experienced before, it's what's going to say, hey, wait a minute. I can't predict how this is going to go. So the act of mental rehearsal, the act of revealing who you would be, how you would act, the feelings that you would want to feel, the details. The body, as the unconscious mind, gets a chemical dose. We said it's chemistry, right?
Yep.
You begin to feel the emotion of that. Now it's more familiar to the body because it's already experienced it. And you know that the body as the unconscious mind can react to an internal experience just as much as an external experience we perceive through the senses. If you've ever woke up in the emotion of a dream.
Oh, yeah, that's very true.
Then you know it's true.
Yep.
Now the question is, do you have the patience? Do you have the desire? And do you have the will to set your body down and say, stay? Because most people say, I can't do this. I can't sit down. I can't stop my mind from thinking. And that's an excuse. But if you could sit yourself down and you could mentally rehearse that future state, that not how you get there, but what you would do when you're there, how you would live, how you would talk, how you would act, who you would be with.
Right.
If you could do that, then you would have the experience. And to the passionate person who really gets involved in it, they feel like they're living in that experience. And now the body's involved. And now you're ahead of your future.
Yep. You're
ahead of your time. You are, and if you really feel the emotion of it, we remember things because we can remember how they feel, right? You remember you're old enough, so you can remember 9/11 where you were at.
Yep.
Right?
I could tell you exactly where I was at.
Exactly where you were at because of the strength of the emotion. So if you cultivate a strong emotion based on that future event, and you feel it, and you're in it.
Yeah.
You are loving your life for what you've accomplished. You're going to remember it better. Now you're remembering your future.
So in part of this, because I know any of us who have spent any time in business, in personal development, and anything like that, we know about the art of visualization, right? And how important that can be in having those pictures that are there. But Kenneth is saying, take it even further. It's not just about having this stuff around you. You have to really calm your mind, sit down, and start to live in that future before that future is a reality. And it's probably the most powerful form of visualization that you can possibly get, because you're actually experiencing that emotion, and that emotion is triggering that chemical response that's turning it into a memory. It's turning it into something where you're actually already experienced that. It just hasn't happened yet. It's such an amazing concept. And I'm going to interject one quick story, because I did this prior to me even having any clue about any of this stuff. And it's a really simple thing, but I remember when I was 20 years old, driving to work every day, I went past this one insurance agency. And I had started, I was working for Aflac at the time. I had a life health license, and was having really mediocre success with that. But every day I went past this office, and I don't know what it was that drew me to this office, but every day I just went by, and I started living in that future of, I'm going to work there, I'm going to work there, I'm going to work there, I'm going to work there. And I started to ingrain this into my subconscious. And all of a sudden I saw an ad, and it said, hey, such and such insurance agency, the one that I was going after, has an opening for an experienced property and casualty agent with a large book of business to bring over, right? So they wanted somebody who's got a P&C license, which I didn't, that's property and casualty. They wanted somebody with a large book of business. I think I had like 2 clients. And they wanted somebody with experience in property and casualty, which I had a grand total of 0 days, right?
Love it.
And I go, oh, cool, this is it. And I went in, and I remember sitting across the table at this interview, and the principal agent there looking at me and going, John, you're not what I'm looking for. You're greener than green. You've got no experience, but I like you, and I think I'm supposed to hire you.
Love it.
You know, and I think it was just that confidence in me that I've already been working there, right?
Yes.
It's not up to you, man. I already made the decision.
Absolutely. And I love that, because it teaches in the form of a story a very important point.
Mm-hmm.
If you can be defined by that vision of the future, in spite of the conditions in your environment, in spite of everything that was telling you that you weren't the right person, you decided to go ahead and say, hey, this is the job, this is it. Many people give up on their dream because of the conditions in their environment.
That's so true.
Because they aren't getting feedback from the environment that the time is right.
Yep.
I'll start tomorrow.
Yep.
You know, or maybe when I get enough money in the bank, or and I'm not a financial advisor. That's a different podcast. But the point is true, right? That if you can't hold on to that vision of the future, in spite of the conditions in your environment, then you won't change. And if you don't change, you won't become the person that lives in that future.
And you might miss those opportunities when they do come up, because
you will.
There's a reality that as you start to visualize your future, and as you start to go through these things and you rehearse it over and over again, the universe has a way of helping to prove us right. It's really one of the most amazing things that I personally have learned is when you set your mind to something and you've ingrained it in your subconscious and it's become already who you are and what you do, the universe conspires for you. And in the same way, if we live in that continual state of stress and that high beta and just survival mode, the universe conspires to make it so. And so it's really interesting for me. I look at, you know, certain people that are in my friend circle where they live in this high stress, high anxiety, and something bad is always happening to them.
Absolutely.
They're attracting it.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I'll put it in even more practical terms for those of us out there who are more of an engineer's mind. I'll put it into more practical terms. We don't see reality how it is. We see reality how we are.
Ooh, I like that.
So those individuals you're talking about always have something to complain about. The emotions that they're feeling, the frustration, the anger, the annoyance, is filtering their perception of reality. That chemistry is affecting the way that their brain functions and what they pay attention to. So they're only seeing anything that's equal to how they're feeling. But if you cultivate the feelings of your future, and you feel abundant before your wealth, you feel healthy before your health, you feel love before your relationship, you're in the state of being of wealth.
Yeah.
You're in the state of being of health. You're in the state of being of love. And you're going to see things equal to health in your environment. You're going to say, oh, no, that's the healthy choice.
Yep.
You're going to say, oh, no, that is what a wealthy person would do. Now, I'm going to go out to this event because that could be where I meet the person that I want to do. Where if a person's feeling self-loathing, they're not going to go out and do anything fun.
Yep.
They're not going to go out and engage because nobody loves me. I'm sorry, I got a little bit.
It's so true, though. And I think it's kind of like car buying, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Once you pick the car you want, everybody has it.
Everybody has it. I've never seen this car before.
Until you want it.
I'm gonna be the only one in town who has whatever.
Great example.
And then the minute you go out there and I'll tell you, Kenneth, Tesla, man. I love Teslas. I will own a Tesla.
He'll probably find a way to segue to Tesla every single episode.
I don't know if I did last time, but maybe that'll become a thing. Who knows? But when I decided, man, I want a Tesla, and I started really ruminating on I'm going to get a Tesla, I went from never seeing any of them to, oh my God, does everybody own a freaking Tesla now? Absolutely. It's crazy. They're all over the place. And I can be driving around totally checked out, just, subconsciously driving somewhere. And all of a sudden, a Tesla will go past me. And immediately I'm noticing it. I'm focusing on it because it's something that's been in my life and that I've had that vision of for so long that I'm seeing it. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And the car analogy just,
boom,
it works.
Solidifies it.
Every single one of us here has experienced that happening at some point in their life. If they have ever, looked at buying a car.
Absolutely. You cannot create a new future holding on to the emotions of the past. You just can't do it because you won't see possibility in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So how does somebody, let's say somebody's listening to this and it's clicking really well and they're understanding like, man, I need to change. I need to become my future self. I need to take steps to stop this 6-cycle carousel that I'm on of just, constantly going in these circles. Where can they start? How do you get started in that endeavor of becoming the future you?
First thing you got to do is you have to create the gap between who you're being and who you want to be.
Okay.
So that means you're going to have to start thinking about what you've been thinking about. You're going to have to start noticing how you've been acting and how you've been behaving. You're going to have to pay attention to the emotions that you feel on a frequent basis because that makes up your personality. How you think, how you act, and how you feel creates your personality. And your personality creates your personal reality. So now, the next thing you'd want to do, now I know where I am, I know who I am, is you want to create a model. Who is the person that lives in that future? And hey, if you can't think of it, that means you don't have the material in your brain. You should go Google something, right? I mean, this is the age of information.
Absolutely.
Where ignorance is a choice.
Amen.
So you should be able to find somebody or some place where you can get the information so you can start building a model of who is the person who lives in that future? How do they think? How do they act? What are the behaviors that they demonstrate? How do they live their life and how do they feel? How do they demonstrate themselves? What is their emotions? And now you have the gap, who you are and who you want to be.
Right.
And every morning when you get up, review that list. Look at it and say, okay, this is who I no longer want to be. I no longer want to think these thoughts. I no longer want to act this way. I no longer want to feel this way. And this is who I do want to be. Mm-hmm. This is the thoughts I do want to think. And I'm talking being specific.
Yeah.
Put it out there. Like, hey, there's infinite opportunities out there because guess what there is?
Amen.
How do I want to act? Oh, I'm going to go out and talk to people. You've done this in your own life. I'm going to go talk to people. How do you feel? I feel confident, right? And you review that every day. And then you sit yourself down and you cultivate it, you don't get up until you're thinking, acting, and feeling that way. And then you take that out into your life and watch out.
Yeah.
The longer you can hold on to that, because you're being somebody different.
Right.
You're a different personality. And a different personality creates a different personality. And hey, if you get knocked off your bike, and I've done it hundreds of thousands of times, life happens and it knocks you off, and you go back into survival and you go back into the old routine. Just catch yourself and say, whoa, buddy, that's not who I want to be. And then you do it again and you do it again. Sooner or later, through repetition, you're going to condition your mind and body to be that person, and you'll be unconsciously good at it. And when you're being that person, you'll unconsciously make all the right choices in your day. Because right now, people are unconsciously making the wrong choices in alignment with their future. They're making choices unconsciously that are in alignment with their familiar, predictable past, because the body wants the known.
Yeah. And so you're just going to end up having that same pattern over and over and over again. So,
how many of you know, I know you do, somebody who gets in the same relationship over and over and over again, and they keep coming to you, and it's like listening to a broken record. Different person, different time, same experience. You know this is true.
So somebody just came to every single person's mind that's listening to this podcast.
Exactly. And so you know that this is true. And what's happening is that the body, as the unconscious mind, is reproducing the same experiences by making the same choices, by demonstrating the same behaviors to get the same experience, to produce the same emotion, because that's what it's known. And even if it's not good for them, even if it's not healthy for them, even if they don't even like it, they'll keep reproducing it because their unconscious mind is driving the car.
Right. And on the flip side, we can focus on the positive side of this too, as far as probably everybody out there knows somebody that just always seems to succeed.
Yes.
Always seems, wow, they're the luckiest person I've ever met in my life. Everything they touch turns to gold. And they could walk up and sell ice to an Eskimo and become rich from it, because they're just that person who everything they touch turns to gold.
That's right.
And the reality is it works both ways. But a lot of times we get stuck, like you said, in that subconscious programming. And I think a lot of what we do, it has to do right now with what we intake, right? So all of you TubPreneurs right now, you guys are taking time to listen to new information. And new information allows us to kind of have the basis for change. We're taking in new information so we can have new emotions that'll lead to a new reality eventually if we harness that. And so
every time you get new information, you create a new neurological network in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
But the Nobel laureate, 2000 laureate Kandel, found that if you don't review that information, that within hours or days that those new neurological networks prune.
Mm-hmm.
So learning is creating new neurological connections, but remembering is sustaining and maintaining those connections. That's why you got to keep coming back to it. That's why you got to hit it every single day. You got to keep firing those neurological networks, because neurons that fire together wire together.
I love that. And that's a saying that Dr. Joe Dispenza has. And if you go to one of Ken's courses, you're going to hear that over and over and over again. And it's so important, because what we're talking about here, and this blew my mind, Kenneth, was I've always known or heard about the visualization and almost like woo,
Sure.
the weird kind of way. But the reality is there is science that backs this up.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So can you talk a little bit about the science behind it? Maybe if somebody's listening to this and they're like, oh my God, they're talking about visualization again. Come on, you can't just visualize your way to success. Can you share with us a little bit of some of the science that they're finding backs up this ideology?
Absolutely. So the first thing we have to recognize is that by the time we are in our mid-30s, 95% of who we are,
it's me right now,
is a set of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that were acquired through repetition. Mm-hmm. Hardwired attitude, beliefs, and perceptions that function just like a computer program. And the old science used to tell us that's who you are.
Can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Absolutely. That was the old adage, yes. And the science backed it up back then. But around 30, 40 years ago, the Donald Hebb, a Canadian neuropsychologist, he found that, and he's one that coined the phrase that Dr. Jill uses so often, that neurons that fire together wire together, and neurons that no longer fire together no longer wire together. And that is neuroplasticity. And the brain is neuroplastic until the day we die.
Wow.
That means we are inherently super adaptable. So we have to recognize that. Now, the second thing is how is that true? How do we know that neurons that fire together wire together, and neurons that no longer fire together no longer wire together? Well, one of the phenomenons is that when neurons fire across the synaptic gap, one of the things that happen in the opposite direction of that firing is a chemical called neurogrowth factor goes from the stronger neuron to the weaker neuron, from the receiving neuron back to the sending neuron, to make it easier for them to fire in synchrony.
Yeah.
Now, here's the key point that people need to understand, is that there's a finite amount of neurogrowth factor in the brain. It's not an infinite supply. So neural growth factor has to come from somewhere.
Yep.
So as you're making new neurological connections in your brain, so as you're reviewing the old self, that list of thoughts, actions, and feelings that you no longer want to present,
Right.
and that list of thoughts, actions, and feelings that you do want to be, and you start stopping those old neurological networks from firing, and you begin to fire those new neurological networks, and you do it over and over again, the principle says that neurons that fire together wire together. And you are neurologically conditioning your brain to be that future. Now, why do we know that mental rehearsal is such a good tool for doing this? Because of an experiment, and this is one Joe loves to talk about. We call it the piano player experiment. So 4 groups in this experiment. One group's control group. Everyone knows control group, right? They don't do anything. They don't change anything. They don't do anything different. They're the group that we're going to test and see if there's been a change. Second group, they are taught a piano scale, simple right-handed piano scale. And they're going to play this over and over again for 2 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Woo. Massive practice.
Massive practice, right? And sure, everyone understands that. If I keep playing the same scale over and over again, I'm going to break strong neurological networks. I'm going to get good at it. Right?
Muscle memory,
Muscle memory,
Yep.
so to speak. Yep. And that's going to make a strong neurological network. Okay, great. Third group just does whatever they want. Just making noise on the piano, not playing the scale. Fourth group were taught the scale but never played the piano. This is an important part. Never touched the piano. They just
watched.
They just watched, learned the scale so they could rehearse it in their head. See themselves in the first person playing the scale. And they mentally rehearsed the same progression, seeing themselves playing that same scale with their right hand 2 hours a day for 5 days. And the cortical output map of the brain for the right extensor and flexor part of the motor cortex showed statistically the same neurological growth as the group that did physically play the scale. So What does that mean? That means the body as the unconscious mind doesn't know the difference between something we rehearse and something that we've experienced. You could say then that the brain and body were prepared to play that scale, having never done it. And so that's why mental rehearsal is such a powerful tool for this. And we know that you then are neurologically and biologically changing. You are ahead of your time. You are being the person ahead of your time. And just like I said before, once you alter the chemistry in your brain, you are perceiving reality different. People know this. If you're extremely pissed, and you could be really pissed off at someone you really, really love, but in that moment, you can't think of one good thing about them because your perception of reality is altered by that chemistry. So you're going to see your reality around you differently. And that's going to allow you to see possibility where you had not seen that before. And as soon as you take action on those possibilities, you still got to get up off your meditation and go do something.
Right.
And if you take action now, you see possibility, and because you're in that state of possibility and you're in that state of being, it's the future you're more likely to act on it.
Right.
Because you feel like the person who would do that. Now you're going to have a different experience. And so it's not woo-woo, it's neurological.
Yeah. It's amazing. And TubPreneurs, I really hope that you're listening to what Kenneth is talking about, because what he's talking about can be and should be and will be life-changing for you if you implement this and if you do this. And this is one of those podcasts where I'd encourage you, like, listen to it over and over and over again, because I can tell you, as somebody who's drank from the fire hose of Kenneth, it took me a few times of hearing it. And I'm practicing it, right? I'm learning it and I'm becoming it. But this is something that's so vitally important. So you mentioned, you kind of touched on the meditation of it. And meditation, I think, is something that a lot of people don't understand. Sometimes people, you hear meditation and they think of, sitting with your arms up and all this stuff, or they think of Hindu religions. I know for me, as a Christian, it took me a little while and a little maturity over the course of my life to kind of realize, like, meditation isn't a bad thing or a crazy thing, but meditation is really just kind of thinking on something. So can you explain kind of in simple terms what the meditation is that you recommend and how people might want to look at that?
Yeah, let's demystify meditation a little bit. First off, the word meditation in Sanskrit literally means to become familiar with.
Okay.
So like we said before, this idea of the old self, the new self, you'd want to become familiar with the old self, right? So that as you go out in your day, that those habitual thoughts, those habitual actions, and those habitual feelings don't go past your conscious awareness. You can stop it in the moment. You can break the cycle. If you're the consciousness observing the program, you're no longer the program. You have an opportunity for Control-Alt-Delete.
Can I give a really quick? So I'm going to make this really just a quick, easy one that all of us can do.
Yeah.
And we're probably going to do it right now, you and I, because
Sure.
we're in the Tub talking. But even just think about how many times you say or during the day. And you'll notice that you start to consciously become aware of it once you become conscious of the unconscious. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Exactly. We got to become conscious where we were once unconscious. Meditation's a great space to do that, because you shut yourself down.
Right.
And you're not looking at anything. You're not touching anything. You're not hearing anything. You're not plugged into your environment. The only thing's left is your thoughts. And you're going to notice what you obsess about.
Right.
You're going to notice, and you become familiar with your unconscious self. And then the other thing we'd want to become familiar with then is the future self. And we explained that already, right?
Yep.
You'd want to become very familiar with who you want to be. So that's the first part of the meditation. So you want to mentally rehearse both those aspects. The old self, so that you no longer allow those unconscious programs to manifest themselves and demonstrate themselves in your day. So you're consciously aware of it, you'll stop it. Your new self, so that you can demonstrate it in your life, initiate it. Once you mentally rehearse something, it's like being in the batting cage, right? You keep swinging, you keep working on your swing. You want the opportunity to be at the plate in the ninth inning with a chance to win, right? You want that.
Hit it out of the park,
So if you've mentally rehearsed the big sale, you've mentally rehearsed landing the huge contract, you mentally rehearse getting your investors, you're going to want to go out and demonstrate it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a huge part of it. The next thing is that if we recognize that it's our environment, the people we know, the things and objects that we interact with on a daily basis that are influencing us and triggering these unconscious programs, right? You can't allow someone to sit at a stoplight when it turns green for 3 seconds without getting pissed off, right? That means your environment's influencing the way you think, act, and feel. And if you recognize that, then it would make sense then you want to disconnect from your environment to cultivate you. that you would want to let go of your perception of time and forget about your body for a second so that you can think about this future, so that you're undistracted. So meditation is shutting your eyes, putting in soft music so you're not distracted, so that you can have an inward experience. So it would make sense, then we would want to do that. And the last thing, and this is the most important part that's been demystified by Dispenza and his team of researchers. All these subconscious programs exist beneath the analytical mind. They're below your conscious awareness, and they happen automatically and unconsciously, right? That's why we have to stop them. We can't. So if we wanted to make some change in our lives, it would make sense then. We would want to change the program. We would want to change those unconscious programs, but you can't do that from your analytical mind. Because your analytical mind will tell you, you've never done it before. You don't have this. These conditions are right. It's going to be a recession, whatever, right? So it makes sense then you'd want to get into that operating system. And to do that, you need to be able to change your brain waves. And the form of meditation that we teaches people to change their brainwave frequencies. And you go from beta, we're in beta right now, down to alpha, down to theta, down to delta every night when you go to sleep.
Okay.
So as we go to sleep, the brain starts to produce melatonin. Mel puts you to sleep, and you naturally go from beta to alpha to theta to delta, unconscious sleep. And in the morning, Sarah wakes you up. Serotonin, you go from delta to theta to alpha to beta. Now, the analytical mind is in there between beta and alpha, and in beta. Right? So as we dip into alpha and then ultimately into theta, we lose analytical capacity. You know this is true because when you dream, you could do amazing things. Right. And your analytical mind doesn't tell you
doesn't matter what the reality is. Right. You're flying.
You're flying, right? Yep. Your analytical mind doesn't tell you it's not possible. So it would make sense then if you mentally rehearsed below your analytical mind, and the students of Dr. Joe can do this repeatedly. And I can teach you how to do this. If you can do it and you can get into that sweet spot, and alpha is a great spot too, and it's not hard to get there. You go there every day. And you mentally rehearse that new reality. There will be no analytical mind to tell you it's not true. And if you know the details, you see yourself in the conference room pitching, and you see people nodding their head, and you see people looking off, thinking about how this is a really good idea. And you just know they're going to put their money on the table because they want to create what you want to create. You're going to have an experience in theta. And your body's going to believe you're living in that. And now you've already had it. And so when you step into that conference room, whenever that happens, could be months, could be a year, who cares? It's your future. Right. When you step into that, you're going to go, oh, this is my moment. And just like you walked into that insurance agency, you knew that was your moment. Yeah. You just walked in and did it. You weren't questioning how am I going to do? You weren't worried about it because you had already rehearsed it. All it was is a matter of you stepping into the box, getting your feet right, and then when that pitch came, you just swang for the fences.
So it's safe to say that the analytical mind is really the result of our subconscious programming. In a sense of...
Well, I would say it's the barrier to that subconscious. We don't have direct access now to the operating system.
Right. What I should probably rephrase what I'm trying to say. Our beta operates based on the subconscious. So whatever it is that we've experienced in our life, and this is what Kenneth was talking about when you're operating in beta, the reason it's telling you all the reasons you can't do this is because it's going by that subconscious programming that says, hey, John, you tried this. You jumped off the roof and you fell, right? Yep. And it's not until we change that subconscious programming by stepping into alpha and theta that we can actually change that programming. And if any of you are out there and you're computer junkies, right, or you understand that you have an operating system, right? We've actually talked a little bit on this program about operating systems for businesses and everything, but looking at operating systems of computers, I can't make a Windows computer behave like an Apple computer.
Right.
No matter how hard I try to will it, or vice versa. I mean, I get on a Mac, I'm an idiot on a Mac. I know Windows, I'm an idiot on Mac. I can't make it do the things I want it to do based on what I know from Windows, because at the end of the day, the subconscious, the programming of that operating system tells me I can't. And our brains are the same way. And until we actually get in and we change that subconscious programming, that's what you're talking about through meditation, changing that subconscious programming to be able to already become what we want to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if we look at the reality we talked about earlier about individuals creating the same experiences habitually and unconsciously, that the body seeks the familiar, it would make sense then that we'd want to take a little time out of our day to make the body familiar with who we want to be.
Mm-hmm.
To condition the body to be the mind of that future. Because a habit is when the body has become the mind.
Right.
It's when the body knows better than the conscious mind, right? And so if you take time out of your day, and it does take repetition, and it does help if you can have a strong emotional experience. But if you took a little time out of your day, and I'm saying 30 minutes, less than 3% of a 16-hour day, if you took a little time out of your day just to teach the body what that future is going to be like ahead of the event, and it becomes familiar with that future, comfortable with it, it's going to unconsciously guide you in the direction of that future. And so now it's not law of attraction as much as it is I'm moving in the direction of my destiny because I've cultivated the state of being, the way of thinking, the way of feeling that produces the actions that are going to get me to that.
Yeah.
And I don't have to fight my unconscious mind to get there. I just ride that wave and I stay present and make the right choices in the moment that are in alignment with that future.
Wow, that is so good. And I really encourage you guys, listen to this podcast a couple times, because there's so much, just so much wealth of information in what Kenneth is talking about. And repetition, that's what we're talking about, is so important to being able to start to learn this and how to do this. It sounds really easy. I can tell you from experience, it's not. It takes very structured, very conscious ability to say stop, to stop your body. Now, I talked before about a lot of the folks that are listening to TubPreneurs are aspiring entrepreneurs, or early in their entrepreneurial endeavor, or early in maybe a new leadership role or something. How does this idea of creating your future self and becoming that person before you're there, how is that going to help that aspiring entrepreneur, the person who just stepped into leadership, that person that's going after that big promotion, or looking at making changes in their life? I mean, I think it's pretty cut and dry, but can you touch a little bit on how that would help specifically an entrepreneur that's looking to get started?
Yeah, and before I jump in there, I just want to say one thing to the audience. And I want you to understand this fully. That you have all of the neurological and biological hardware to do this. There are people on every single continent, all ages, all shapes and sizes, male, female, every color of skin, that do this every single day. This is a human capability. It's not a question if you have the capability. It's just a question of when are you going to start to learn the skill of it.
Oh, amen.
I just want them to know that, it does take an act of will, and it does take energy, and it does take conscious effort, as you have said. But you have everything that you need to do it. You were designed to do this. Now, back to your question of how is this directly going to help the aspiring entrepreneur? Well, first of all, think of some of the tools that entrepreneurs have at their disposal, right? The business plan. How does that correlate? Well, the business plan helps you get very clear on what you are creating.
Right, exactly.
Right? Now, the other part that I'm going to add to it that the business plan doesn't have is, why do you want it?
Amen.
Why do you want that? What does it really mean for you? Because you can get caught up in the details of the services you'll provide, but why do you want it? And that's why your services are so important, right? To help people understand their vision and their values as well, so that they're guided by a compass. And so if you can tie to your business plan a strong emotion, so you got the clear intention. If you can tie to it a strong emotion, like, how would I feel once I've accomplished this? How does this change my life? And how does it impact me personally? How does it make my family life better? How does it make my community better? How does it make the whole world better if you that grandiose? And I hope you are. And you can start to say, well, man, I would be inspired, and I'd be in love with my life, and I'd be in awe. Now you're getting that business plan past the brainstem, and you're getting the body involved. And once you know this to be true, once your mind and body are in alignment, once they're working together, now you're headed for a destiny.
Amen.
So the power behind this is it gets you in alignment. It gets you into the state of being of your future. And yeah, the business plan is important, but sooner or later, for the person who forgot why they were doing it, they're going to have a hard time staying committed. They're going to have a hard time making it through the tough times, right? And yeah, I've had some tough moments in this last year, right? But in when I land 8,000 more in this month, notice how I said that. When I land, I will have achieved a 6-figure business in a year, in a 12-month span.
Amen. Amen. And that's so important, what Kenneth is talking about. It's creating not only the vision for your business, but the vision for you, the vision for your life, defining what that is. What does that look like? And that's really ultimately becomes kind of a guiding compass to what you want to be. And it's a great place to start as an entrepreneur, or even just somebody who wants more out of their life. As Kenneth said, we're all capable of this. If Kenneth can do it, anybody can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it. If at the end of the day, anybody can do this. Everybody that you talk to who's had massive success in their life comes from some story at some point where there was a reason why they couldn't be successful. There was a reason why they should have stopped. They could have stopped, and most people would have stopped. But they didn't stop. And when you can get so crystal clear on that vision and that picture of who you want to be and what you want your life to look like, and it's become so ingrained in you that you've wrote it into your subconscious over and over and over again, it actually becomes really easy. Because all of a sudden, every decision that you make just takes you closer to who you already are. And so it's just this, you get off the 6-cycle carousel of being a victim in your life all the time, and you get on the roller coaster that's really just a lot of up and a little bit of down of becoming who you already are. And becoming that person and going forward in your new life and with maybe the same environment, but I'm going to tell you right now, your environment's going to change.
Absolutely.
As you start going down this process, your friends are going to change. Your money situation is going to change. Your business life is going to change. You're going to have all of these things that are going to change to accommodate so that your environment accommodates who you already are and the vision of yourself that you've already become. Wow, this is so good. I kind of want to end with, I love talking about what actionable steps we have, and specifically around, I think it's so important that as we continue to hone ourselves and become our future selves, that we're constantly taking in information, preferably from people who have already done something, right? So as somebody's getting started in an entrepreneurial journey and wanting to learn more about this idea of aligning the body and the mind, what resource would you recommend that they check out, maybe in book form or something similar?
Yeah, and I already mentioned the book, really, for me. And what I teach is based on this book. And the way I learned this content in the beginning was from the book. So that's definitely a path. It's a little bit harder. It's helpful to have someone who's been down the path to help coach you on the path, but it is the book that I learned this from. And if you can do what the book recommends, you can embody this. And it's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza? Absolutely. Okay. So Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. Get on, order a copy of that tonight. And then the other thing, you have some open enrollments that you do, right? Actually, I'm trying a new format to that now. Oh, okay. Okay, perfect. So the idea is I'm going to create a list, a reservoir, so to speak, of people who are interested and want to take the program. And once I hit a critical mass, I will schedule the open enrollment. And to get into that, you're going to have to fill out an application. I want to make sure that you're the type of person who really wants to change and wants to invest in this. I'm not interested in working with people who are in victim mentality and are looking for me to give them the solutions how to run their business. I'm not going to give you that. What I'm going to give you is the technology for you to embody information, and you go find the solutions and you become that future. So the way that I'm doing that now is you just reach out to me directly, connect with me. I will get you the application form. We will engage in a 30-minute conversation on the phone or Zoom or coffee shop to see why you're interested in this. I want to make sure that you're the right candidate for the program. I've done enough pushing on rope, right? That's a good way to put it. So you got to want this. Yeah. And for the people who want it, then I got enough people, then I will schedule an open enrollment and we will make it happen. And do you have any offer that you want to give to the TubPreneur listeners specifically, that as they reach out to you, if they mention, hey, I heard you on TubPreneurs, do you have any offer or anything like that you want to give to them? Yeah, absolutely. So if you use keyword TubPreneurs, okay. Right, we would say the promo code. Yes. TubPreneurs. That's a 20% discount on the 25%. 25% discount on the program. Awesome. Yep. Fantastic. So if you guys want to learn more about what it is that Kenneth does, I can tell you right now, as somebody who has went through one of Kenneth's program, and there's a whole nother section that we'll have to have you in the tub another day to talk about with the hard. It's just absolutely amazing. I know this much about it. I haven't been through that program yet, but I'm looking forward to it. But in the description below, whether you're listening on Spotify or you're listening on YouTube or Twitch or any of the other, we're on like 15 different platforms right now. It's crazy. Awesome. But wherever you're listening, in the description, there should be some contact information for Kenneth. And it doesn't have to be just here locally. It's anywhere. Anywhere. Nowadays with technology, we're streaming this out to the world. And we have consultants all over the world too. Okay. So if you're remote in a different area and you're interested in this content and you want it to be more personal in person, I can find you somebody, I'm sure. Perfect. So reach out to Kenneth if this is something that you want to do. And I can tell you, if you want a change in your life, if there's something that you're not happy with in your life, I cannot attest to the fact enough that you need to do this. You absolutely need to get the book. You absolutely need to talk to Kenneth or one of the other consultants that he can put you in touch with. It is going to change your life if you let it, if you allow it. And I can tell you, just personally, it's changed my life. And if you do the work. Amen. Amen. It's not a, hey, you're going to read this book and all of a sudden you're going to be a changed person. Knowledge without application is dead. That's where Kenneth talked about the brainwaves. We can learn it. We can start to get that neural processing going, those neural connections going. But if we don't continue to actually apply it, it's just going to die. Any last thoughts that you want to leave our listeners with before we finish things up here? Yeah, last thing I would say is the most loving thing that you could do for yourself is to bet on you. That if you're waiting for some circumstance, some environmental cue, some governmental change, some new policy to make your decision, to leap into the unknown, you'll never go. You'll never make that leap. That the most loving thing that you could do for you is to take a bet on you.
Amen. So what you're saying is if you needed a sign, here's your sign.
Here's your sign.
Bet on yourself. Go do it. Kenneth, thank you so much. I always enjoy our conversations, and I'm so glad that we were able to share this time in the tub,
Yes,
TubPreneurs. And guys, next week, we're going to be having Josh Levac from Box Drop Mattress in the tub. He's going to be talking about how he got started with a franchise. So if you've ever looked at franchising as an option, that's going to definitely be one that you're going to want to plug into. He's probably going to be able to share a lot of information on how that process works, what it looks like on the back end, and answer some of those questions that might be stewing in your mind. Also, don't forget, the conversation doesn't end here. Kenneth is available on Volley. We have the link down in the description below. It's a video asynchronization video messaging app where you can actually get on and ask Kenneth a question, pepper him with any additional information you want, and he's going to be in there through this week and possibly further, but specifically this week in the AMA, Ask Me Anything, Kenneth Scott channel, that you can have access to it. Just click the link down below and join us. And thank you again, Kenneth. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been super fun, John. I'm super excited for you in this platform and this program, and all the other individuals out there who are going to be joining you in the tub in the future. It's going to be a great experience, and I know you're going to evolve the experience, and so it's only going to get better. And I look forward to talking to people in the Volley.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day. And remember, this is your sign. Bet on yourself.
Love it.